Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the day here at ArborFest, and welcome to also to the several hundred people we have dialed into the live stream. I am CEO of the Key Group, and that involves the Key, Governor Hub, Arbor, Sam People. But I have a tech background, working in tech for about 20 years, and I joined the Key about 6 years ago, very much with a view of how could we bring practice from open source communities about sharing best practice between schools, and also thinking about how technology could really transform the way that we work in schools. I was a chair of governors until 6 months ago, and I've been through a couple of Ofsted inspections myself. But I'm joined on stage today to explore the question of how do you get Ofsted-ready using Arbor. We'll be hearing from Alex from Ofsted in a minute about the key changes that are coming with the new inspection framework as we move off one-word judgments to a more comprehensive scorecard, of which there are many views in the country about. We'll also be talking to school leaders about how they've been through Ofsted inspections and used Arbor to date, and also about how they're thinking about how that might evolve with the new scorecard. We took a bit of a risk, of course, on programming this event here today at this point in the year, because we're still awaiting the outcomes of the Ofsted consultation following the Big Listen. And it's not yet clear, not 100% clear yet, if the changes that are proposed in the new format will be rolled out at the beginning of the next academic year. Hopefully we may get some light on that. But we think this conversation here today is useful, both to look at existing practice and to sort of think ahead about how, through the new lens of inclusivity, how we look at everything from attendance to attainment to enrichment, and really building schools where there is a sense of belonging, and we think about how the whole provision of the school is offered. As I mentioned, Ofsted haven't yet published that full consultation, but they have been running a pilot with 240 schools with the new scorecard. And luckily for us, Alex will be talking a little bit about how that's been done and feedback that they've been getting on the pilot today. So a panel looking at existing practice, but also thinking forward. And on that note, I'd like to ask the panel to maybe introduce yourselves, the school that you come from, to start with, and then we'll go into experience of Ofsted to date.
Good. So, afternoon, everybody. My name's Holness. I'm currently an assistant principal. I oversee personal development. My school is in London, in central London. So if you know the Shard, that's practically where my school is. We oversee that. And did you say a fun fact?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
one thing that you'd like people to know about you?
One thing I would like people to know. So I've got 20 years of experience in education. So I started off as a volunteer, working in a primary school, and now I'm an assistant principal in a secondary school.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Okay. Afternoon, everyone. My name's Lewis Dinsdale. I'm head teacher of a larger than average primary school in North Liverpool. We have 463 pupils at my school. I've been a head teacher since 2011. I've had 3 Ofsted inspections. The most recent one was last October, so I've got fairly recent and relevant experience of Ofsted, which I'm happy to share with people today. The one fact I think that I would like to share with people is that I also play in a ukulele covers band in Liverpool called Splinter Dukes, and we're for hire. So if you're ever in Liverpool, and we're about 4th or 5th best ukulele act in Liverpool, so look us up.
And now you've performed at the Rep.
And now, yeah, this is probably the biggest stage I've ever played on.
Alex Jones.
Hi, afternoon everyone. I'm Alex Jones. I'm the Chief Analyst and the Director for Insights and Research at Ofsted. Ofsted, I think, as you know, as well as being the Inspectorate for Schools, we also cover early years and further education skills and children's services. And a fact about myself, I mean, I don't know if this is a fact or very interesting necessarily, but I am married to a teacher. I have 2 children in primary school, and I'm also a school governor. So my life really is sort of saturated with education. It's nice to be here.
That's dedication to research.
Yes.
in action. Thank you very much. I'd like to sort of start this question about what role you've played in your schools when you've had inspections in terms of preparing data, both sort of well ahead, but also in the moment of inspections, Carly, and share that with the audience.
So I think something that I didn't share prior is I've had 2 Ofsteds in the last 2 years before the changes. So as I said, my role is personal development. So what that entails for people in the room that may not be aware is everything outside the curriculum. So evidence in PSHE, enrichment, careers, post-16 destinations, post-18 destinations. And my role is really data-driven, so I created in my school a tracker that's called Priority versus Privilege, because I do believe everything centres around the whole child. Although we have the curriculum, we know in this day and age that school is not built for everybody. And I was probably one of those students as well, that the way I learned was very different to everybody else. I wasn't an academic, and that's one of my reasons why I'm in teaching today. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is making sure each and every child has opportunities. And one of the ways I showcase that is through careers. So making sure that we're aware of the students that are having enrichments, and Arbor helps with that. We're able to track that, making sure students have got interventions. And there's different levels of interventions. A toilet pass can be an intervention, CAMS can be an intervention, an academic intervention that might be done by your learning support teams, and making sure we're tracking something so each and every child has something, and making sure that the same students, because sometimes if we're asking a question, we may always go to that same child, challenging teachers' biases to make sure that everybody has got something, so you're not always picking the same child, and making sure those opportunities are equal to everyone. So priority is these students are not getting anything, and why, and privilege means they're getting a lot of opportunities, but are all of these opportunities necessary?
Can I just follow up on that? So how are you gathering that information? Like, how is it being shared with senior leaders in the school, with governors? Because, I mean, a lot of this is not just about the moment of inspection.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally about how we're using data every day to inform time and resource allocation.
So currently, if you're fluent with Arbor, I know it right from the straight of my head. I'm a computer science teacher as well, so that helps. So if you go to like school, you go to trips, you go to events, you're able to track them that way. And then you can go to also interventions. So how we log is it through events, trips, and intervention. So everything's logged on there. And then you can run a report. So with that report, I get that report sent weekly. And it's good with Arbor that it's live. So if like 6 trips have happened in 1 week, that is all getting fed in. And then I send out that report. Arbor can do it as well, but sometimes we filter out that information, because if you've got students that are not enrolled on the register but it's still showing, I just track through it as well. And I send that information out every week to say, this is the data. And then I feed that information to the governors as well through some lovely pie charts. So currently our school is a Teams, we use Microsoft. So if you're not data driven and you don't like the spreadsheets, that information can go on Power BI and it's live as well.
Fantastic. Lewis, can you talk a bit more about the data that you're responsible for, both like pre and during the inspection cycle?
Absolutely. So I think in terms of my own role as head teacher, obviously responsible for everything, but I very much oversee attendance and keeping the governors aware of where our school attendance lies, where we need to work on the gaps in terms of certain groups, and Arbor's really helped us transform that. We jumped ship, we changed from Sims to being an Arbor school in September 2019, and we didn't look back. Our first inspection was October 2019, and we'd only had Arbor a matter of weeks, and I was desperate to show the inspector, what I could, bearing in mind I was still quite new to Arbor, but already I felt like I'd found my way around it relatively quickly and easily. We've set up a custom attendance dashboard that we report to governors, and that's using live feeds out of a custom report, which is just a fantastic way of being able to get that report to governors every single time. One of the conversations I had with the inspector recently, last October, she said, "Oh, this is a nice dashboard. I hope you haven't done it just for me." And I said, "No, do it for the governors. I haven't done it just for you. This is very much what the governors get, but I'm just sharing it with you." So that's the one aspect, is around attendance. My attendance team, made up of my lead learning mentor and my school business manager, and we meet weekly. And so we have, a scheduled weekly report, which we have targeted children, families that we need to keep a really close eye on in terms of attendance, the ones that we're tracking. And so that's really useful because it keeps us right up to date. But we have that, the email comes in before we meet. So half an hour before we meet, it goes to our inboxes. We have that data at our fingertips, which just means that the meetings are really efficient, really thorough and smooth. Yeah. And the other aspect is the assessment side of things, so assessing children's progress. And again, in September 2019, we were quick to try and get reading, writing and maths into Arbor, but we wanted to use Arbor for the whole curriculum. We'd had a separate piece of software tracking curriculum. It was linked to the, can't remember the name of the software, but it's probably better that I don't mention it anyway, because we've left it behind and it's all within Arbor. And when we were talking to the inspector in 2019, the inspector was keen to see what we'd done for reading, writing and maths and could see the progress we were making towards bringing all the subjects into Arbor and being assessed by Arbor. The recent inspection we had, we were able to show the inspector the data dashboard, and she was impressed that not only did we have science, we had the whole curriculum now is teacher assessed and is in Arbor for assessments.
Getting a rounded picture.
Really, yeah, so much better now. We really feel that it's helping us.
There have been a lot of changes to how inspections are organised and feedback, obviously, or changes in the last 2 years. I wanted to pick up on the experience of your most recent inspection, maybe try and sum it up in a couple of words about how it felt. I think this is a very emotional experience for senior leadership teams when you go through an inspection, and possibly compare it to previous inspections. I don't know, Carly.
I feel like there's like three emotions here. So when you get that call and you're in the middle of teaching and you're going into the office, the first thing is panic. And for context, my school was a brand new school, so this was the first ever Ofsted that this school was having. So there's that pressure there to make, this school a community first school for everybody. So panic was the first one. Then during Ofsted, you know your area and you don't want to, you don't want to put on a show because the Ofsted inspectors are already going to know that. But I'm very passionate that I know my area and this is the best for me to showcase what we know. Are you going to see that within the 2 days? No, you're not, but let's showcase the best and let's show them what they need to know. So there was that sense of that proud moment and showcasing your level of expertise. And then challenging that with the inspector as well when they're asking questions. And then the third one is obviously when the result comes and then there's that, I was shattered. I don't think I slept. So I was automatically shattered. But there's that sense of when we got the result, that proud moment there. So the result, our Ofsted was in February last year, and we got good with outstanding feature in leadership and management. And for that to be my first SLT role in a secondary school, and it to be a brand new school, that legacy is going to live even when I leave, when I pass. So I'm proud to say that I was part of the first ever Ofsted of that school.
That's fantastic. Lewis.
So, as I said before, this was my third inspection at my school. The first one was in 2015, and that was, I felt like a rabbit in the headlights. It was all done to me. I felt like they were definitely on their agenda, data-driven, and it wasn't a pleasant experience, I'll be honest. I don't mind sharing that. 2019, it had shifted, very much so. But it was still, it was a whirlwind of an inspection. One inspector, it was a light touch for 2 days. The most recent one in last October, I was just saying backstage to Alex and the rest of the panel that it had a definite shift away from that. First of all, the inspector wanted to find out about the context of the school, which was brilliant. I felt she wanted to hear about the children, where they came from, the background of the school, the challenges that our school faces, as all schools face, which was brilliant. It very much felt like a conversation, so it was collegiate, an educational conversation throughout the 2 days. I didn't feel like when we were having conversations that it was you were being judged and marked down, and I certainly didn't feel like the inspector was trying to catch us out, which wasn't the feeling I'd had prior. So it was a funny inspection because our previous judgment, we were outstanding when I took over. In 2015, we went to good. So I was like, the only way you can go from outstanding is down. So that was great. Poison chalice, why take on the mantle of an outstanding school? And then in 2019, we got remains good. Obviously, it was quite a short report because it was a short inspection. So it's a letter type approach. And then in last October, our most recent inspection, the inspector kept saying, "How do you judge yourselves?" And we were saying, "Well, we think we're good." And she said, but do you think you're better than good? And I was saying, well, no, I'm good's fine. You know, we're happy to be good. And she said, well, I think what I've seen is better than good. And so for the 2 days, we had a conversation where she was kind of pushing us the other way, which was unusual. But our report was we've significantly improved, or we're rapidly improving, you know. And so which is lovely, it's great. But the flip side of that is Ofsted are now going to come back in 12 to 18 months to re-inspect us. So it was kind of, yay, Ofsted's been and gone, but staff are a bit like, now they're going to come back, you know, what's going on? So it was a bit of challenge. However, the conversation and the whole 2-day process felt much fairer, felt listened to, and if that's the direction of travel Ofsted are going in, then I welcome it, really. Yeah.
Understood. Alex, on that note, I mean, do these experiences match the sort of direction of travel and the feedback you've had from the Big Listen?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's really great to hear this, and I hadn't paid Lewis to say that beforehand, but it's really great to hear, I think, that experience that you've described over time and how some of that is changing, and it is the direction that we want to move in. So just to kind of pick up on a couple of points that you've mentioned. So context is something that we heard in the Big Listen is really important and something that we want to be a much greater focus and feature of our inspections. So we've really worked to try and build that into our methodology for understanding the context before the inspection actually starts and having that conversation with the head teacher and others on the call, but also as we kind of move through the inspection process, keeping that in our minds. I think, Kylie, you talked about kind of that feeling of that anticipation and then also kind of pride and showing the best of your school to the inspectors. And that's something that we also want, you know, we really want inspection to feel that it's kind of something that's done with the school and with the leadership in the school rather than something that's done to the school. And so having that kind of involvement of the head teacher and others in the inspection is something that's really important as well. I think there are just two other things I guess I would highlight. So one is that we do absolutely recognise that the kind of anticipation around an inspection is nerve-wracking and daunting, and so we have brought in, I guess many of you here might know this, but we've brought in kind of Monday notifications for routine inspections to try to alleviate a bit of that pressure, so that you know if you haven't had a call on a Monday, you're not going to receive a routine inspection that week. I know it's a small thing, but hopefully a kind of helpful thing as well. And I can't sort of finish this bit without saying that we as an organisation have set out our values of professionalism, courtesy, empathy and respect, and that's something that kind of flows through everything we do at Ofsted. You hear people in Ofsted talk about that every day. It's about how we work internally. It's also about how we work on inspection, and it's something that's really important to us to try to get that right. And so yes, I hope that that's what you're experiencing and also what we will continue to do on inspection.
Thank you. I want to get practical in terms of the title of the session, which was like the use of Arbor in helping both yourselves in the conversation with an inspector, but also your colleagues be prepared to answer questions from inspectors. You've talked, Lewis, very briefly about the attendance dashboard, but can you give other examples of reports that were particularly useful to explain, you know, the work that you were doing as a school or the context that you were in, and that helped that conversation? Definitely.
Well, one of the lifesavers for us in the most recent inspection was the data dashboard. So just under assessment, again, under students and assessment, you can go to the assessment portal if you have that part of Arbor. And the data dashboard was so useful to my assessment lead, who's my deputy head teacher. She was vital in showing the inspector just how much we used Arbor, but also how it showed us the breakdown of the children, the groups of children, in terms of every subject across the curriculum. And she wanted to see that. We wanted to demonstrate how we were using that for all foundation subjects too. because the conversation was around, okay, so you're really analysing reading and writing and maths, and we get that because we see that in lots of schools, but is it the same in science? Is it the same in geography and history? She did a deep dive in humanities, although it's not called a deep dive, I don't know, focus area? It's a focus area, no? Yeah. It was a deep dive, it was definitely. My geography and history teachers were like, Leeds are like, that was a deep dive. You know, just not called the same thing, but that's fine because we'd prepared for it and we were ready for it, and so the data dashboard had helped the subject leaders identify groups of pupils and then be able to talk about those children with the class teachers across school, what we were doing to support them, where we might need to do additional work with them. The great thing about the data dashboard as well is the fact that you can bring in attendance and look at attendance alongside assessment so that, you know, it's not two separate entities. So you might have a child who's dipped one term between the next, but actually if you can see their current attendance, you can see their attendance has dipped, that might answer the question. Obviously, the class teachers know this, but it really helps with pupil performance review meetings that we have termly in school. So the dashboard, data dashboard really
Makes
helps.
a difference. Yeah. Carly?
I would say the same really in terms of like making sure everything's linked. So with our report for personal development, we tie in behaviours and attitudes by having like the house points or behaviour points, whatever you call them within your schools, as well as the attendance. The attendance is key because what you'll find is some of these students are coming in on days where they've got the interventions or the trips and are not coming in on specific days, and you're able to identify patterns that are not so obvious when you've got that data written in front of you. But definitely the report writing for us is so key. And then just making sure everybody's skilled up. So when you're doing your CPDs, and I know Arbor, they would have said in the marketplace, they offer those supports, making sure that you're really taking on those opportunities as well, and those CPDs.
Yes, it's really an opportunity to think about data literacy for all staff, anybody who's going to be involved in an inspection. I'm going to go to Alex for some questions about the pilot in a second. I want to remind the audience we have a QR code up here, and we are going to take some questions from the audience, because I'm sure many of you have questions, that's why you're here, and you've been through inspections, so do feel free to put questions onto the Slido, and we'll come to them in a minute. Alex, you're running a pilot. You're seeing how schools are dealing with the new framework. I know that that's not published or final yet, but can you share a little bit more about how the new framework is working and feedback from schools?
Yeah, sure. So I thought I might touch on three things here. So because we have been having the test visits exactly as you describe, we've also had the consultation, and I can share a couple of things that we're hearing from that, as you mentioned at the start as well. And also we commissioned YouGov to do some polling of parents for us on our proposals. So I thought I might just briefly say a couple of headlines from each of those. So from the YouGov polling, so this was polling of parents, so a representative sample of parents in England. We heard from that that 2/3 of parents preferred the report card that we are consulting on to the existing style of Ofsted reports. And 87% of parents feel that the 5-point grading scale is useful. And of the evaluation areas that we're consulting on, the two that parents felt were most important to them were behaviour and attitudes, and then personal development and well-being. So that's just some, yeah, exactly. So it's some interesting insight into kind of what parents value, and, you know, they're a fundamental audience for the reports and the report cards that we're consulting on. From the consultation itself, so this, as you mentioned, closed a few weeks ago. We received over 16,000 responses, most of which are free text responses, so it's taking us time to make sure we've properly considered those. So don't treat this as kind of the definitive, but a few of the things that we heard from that. One was around, the main positive one was around report cards being seen as useful and context being really important in understanding how to interpret what's in the report card. So that's something we're giving a lot of thought to. We also heard that some found the terminology confusing. So where we talk about secure and strong, for example, that wasn't always clear. So we're giving some thought to how we can use words that are clearer. There was also a bit of confusion around the grading scale, and in particular how what we've currently labelled the kind of top grade as exemplary practice, which is slightly different to the others. There was a bit of confusion around how that would work, so we're giving that some real thought. And also, we heard some feedback that there's more evaluation areas now. We're consulting on more evaluation areas than we currently have, and there was a little bit of feedback around whether or not that's helpful. So we're looking at whether there's some simplification there that we might need to do. And then thirdly and finally, on the pilot's test visits, I should say, we heard around some of the kind of positive feedback we had is around our inspectors have given us feedback that they're able to think about inclusion in a way that's more a focus of the inspection than they have been able to under the existing framework. So that we consider to be really positive. Again, they felt that they're able to consider context more, and also that they're able to think about how to include the voices of children from the schools a bit more in as part of the inspection, which we felt was really positive too. There was a question around workload, both from the perspective of the inspectors and for the schools. So that's something that we're really thinking about, because we absolutely do not want to be driving up workload for schools nor for our own inspectors. So we need to give that a bit of thought. So yeah, just a few headlines in case that's interesting.
No, that's super useful. We're getting lots of questions in, and we're not going to be able to cover them all, but I'm going to try and synthesize a few. One of the questions here is, he says, scrolling down, attendance, attainment, destination, already reported inspection. The inspector already has some context before they come in. How do we showcase our SEND and personal development activities in Arbor, and do Ofsted want to see it? So maybe to you, Carly, about how you've done it, and then Alex, are you curious?
Yes. So another software tool we use is provision maps as well. But yet again, everything can all go into Arbor. So if you're tracking that, you would have it down as your trips, down as your interventions. And when you're doing your interventions, I think something that people do is they track the interventions, but one top tip that I'll give to everybody, have acronyms, because when you're feeding through, so say for example, if you're going on a trip, I have acronyms. So if it's a career trip, I just do the first two initials, so CA. If it's a sports trip, such as a fixture, I'll just say SP for sports. If it's a curriculum trip, like they're going to the museum, I'll put CU. And if it's like a leadership opportunity, I'll put LE. And the reason why I'm getting you to put this is because when you have those governor meetings, or when the trust come to you and want to know, like, how you feeding into EDI, like what is the percentage of girls going on sporting trips, you'll be able to filter that information and showcase what you're doing. So definitely, yes, you should be tracking everything, and it will help your provision be a better place as well.
Thank you. And Alex, is there any comments on that about how schools can evidence what they're doing and impact?
Absolutely. I mean, the main, the main point I would say is actually one that Lewis mentioned earlier. We, on inspection, don't want schools to be doing anything for us. So we really want schools to be doing things that are helpful for them, and showing that to us on inspection is great. In particular, on the point around experiences for pupils with SEND, that is something we are currently interested in, will remain interested in. We're really, and we'll have a greater focus on disadvantaged pupils and pupils facing other barriers to their education. So yes, absolutely, showing that on inspection is great, but don't do anything specifically for Ofsted coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. So we've got a fundamental change to the way that scorecards will be judged, and a development about the methodology. Lewis, as a school leader, have you looked at the new scorecard and sort of said, okay, I know I'm not running the school with preparation for this inspection, but I do want to reflect on, between the tea leaves, what this might mean and how I might want to think about work? I mean, on one side, I think Ofsted will say, you shouldn't be thinking about us, but in reality, we all know what it's like when you have the inspection.
You need to know where the goalposts are, don't you?
Yeah.
That's to know what you're saying. It's really hard, yeah. And that was part of the conversation that I had with the inspector in last October, when she was saying, I think you're better than good. And we were saying, look, just keep us good. write a lovely report and we'll see you in 4 years' time. Okay, bye. That's what I said to my lead inspector at the end of day one, and she was kind of laughing. She said, it doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, if I put in this report with this evidence base, it'll come back to me, so I have to do it. So the difficulty is you have to have one eye on it, of course you do. I've taken part in the consultation, I've looked at the scorecard, absolutely. It's going to change, of course, and you have to have a commitment, I think, to knowing what you're doing in your school is the absolute right thing to do for the children that you serve. And I think if you're committed to that, then actually whatever flavour, brand of scorecard you get in the future, it'll align. I think the thing that's convinced me of that is the most recent experience with Ofsted, in terms of how our pupils were so eloquent in what they were talking about the curriculum, because the conversations that the inspector had came through very strongly indeed. And that's something we've really worked on quite a lot, the children, and understanding their learning and their learning journey. And so, kind of gone around the houses to kind of answer your question. Yes, have got an eye on it. Yes, watching it closely, but I'm not, certainly as a school leader, I'm not using that as the be-all and end-all. I think there's
Conscious of, but not slave to.
That's it, yeah. I think it's a fine line between doing things just to appease Ofsted, and actually as school leaders, you have to not lose sight of our core business, which is
clarity of purpose, and you're doing it
for the children.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, I'm going to ask the provocative question. Any signs of when the new framework will come in, or any signalling you want to give on that?
Unfortunately, I can't say at this point in time. I wish I could,
Sure.
and we will say publicly as soon as we can on that.
Yeah. Okay, look, folks, we've got a busy day, so we're going to wrap this session up. I want to say a huge thank you to Alex, Lewis, and Carly. Thank you very much, and also to the questions. I just want to pick out, there are 20 or 30 questions here. We haven't had a chance to go through all of them. Many of them are about this question of, can Arbor provide us with better standard reports, some of the more standard dashboards? There isn't a sense that you have to be a Lewis and go and create a standard dashboard, and particularly with response to the new scorecard, and also questions about sort of a school on a page, and can we give a good summary? I don't know if I can ask sort of backstage. We're working on this, so just a very quick, you're going to have to press play, but with Ask Arbor, we are working on an ability to basically run a detailed report through to a school on a page, which will give you a context of the school, going through everything that we know is on that scorecard and drawing out of Arbor or the Arbor warehouse where you have that data into a summary. Clearly, that is not your context card. Clearly, that requires you as an individual then to sit, as a school leader, to sit down and go, do I accept this data? Do I want to change it? But thanks very much. We can stop that and go back to the other slide. But I want to sort of reassure you, we're going to pick up on all of the comments that we've got through on questions which are more product-orientated. I'll be speaking to Bex Campbell, who's head of product, and there is work going on to thinking about how do we make it easier to get core metrics out into standard reporting in light of the new scorecard. On that note, a huge thank you to our panellists. Please give them a warm round of applause.